what if the exact mathematical equation that built the continents beneath your feet, like the actual ground, is the exact same equation that built your immune system when you were 2 years old?
I mean, it sounds like science fiction, right? But if you follow the geometry we're looking at today, it's not fiction. It's structural engineering.
Yeah, so welcome to the deep dive. We are tackling something today that is, frankly, going to bend your perception of reality, your biology, and, the actual planet you're standing on.
Oh, absolutely.
We're unpacking this massive, very unconventional, and just heavily mathematical framework. It's from a text called The Geometric Correspondence of Human and Earth Creation. And right at the top, I want to make our mission here crystal clear for you. Every single theory, every mathematical model, and all these linguistic reinterpretations we are about to discuss, they belong entirely to Dr. Khaled Waleed.
Yeah, and that attribution is vital, honestly, because Dr. Waleed is doing something incredibly radical with this material. To really understand the journey we're going on today, you have to understand his approach. In his text, he takes this very firm, heavily analytical stance. He is actively and forcefully pushing back against centuries of traditional or heritage interpretations of these texts.
Right, where tradition sees, poetry or metaphor, he claims to see raw physics.
Exactly. He is essentially arguing that we've been reading an architectural blueprint as if it were a novel.
Yeah, he really doesn't pull his punches.
Not at all. But it is super important to state for you, the listener, that for the sake of this deep dive, we are acting strictly as your guides. We're just walking you through his specific geometric framework.
Right. We aren't here to endorse these views or validate them or, take sides in the theological debates they provoke.
Yeah, our job is just to be completely impartial. We're laying out Dr. Waleed's fascinating rereadings, unpacking the math, and just tracing his logic to see where this whole blueprint leads.
So, okay, if we are going to look at human development, going from a cluster of cells to a walking toddler and map it perfectly onto the geological formation of a planet, we need a starting point.
Right, the foundation.
Yeah, we have to understand the engine. How does Dr. Waleed say this creation actually works?
Well, he argues that to understand the physics of creation, we have to completely redefine one crucial central word in the text.
Okay.
The Arabic word is al-hal. Now, if you pick up almost any traditional translation or commentary, this word is just universally read as a simple measure of time.
Like a year.
Exactly. 365 days.
Just a static block on a calendar, right?
Yeah.
The Earth does a lap around the sun, you flip the page, and boom, that's one al-hal.
Right, but Dr. Waleed categorically rejects that. He says reading al-hal as just a unit of passing time is a fundamental misunderstanding of the text's actual architecture.
Okay, so what is it then?
He defines it not as a measure of time, but as a mechanical structural engine.
Wait, how do you get an engine out of a word that people have used for a year? I mean, that's a massive leap.
It is, but he does it by looking at the root mechanics of the language itself. According to his analysis, al-hal means, and I'm quoting his concept here, a process of rotation with continuous growing displacement.
Continuous growing displacement.
Yeah, it is physical movement. It is structural expansion.
Okay, let me try to visualize this.
Yeah.
If the traditional interpretation sees a year as a flat circle, like a dog chasing its tail, where you just end up exactly back where you started every single January 1st.
Right.
Dr. Waleed is saying al-hal is more like a spiral staircase. You are rotating, sure, but you aren't just coming back to the same spot. You are moving upward. You are expanding outward. You are literally displacing space as you grow.
That is the perfect distinction. Yeah, the dog chasing its tail is static time. You get older, but structurally, you are just enduring. The spiral staircase is existential growth. You are actively taking up more room in the universe. And why does this distinction matter? Because if al-hal is just a year, the texts are just giving us a historical chronicle.
Just a timeline of events.
Precisely. But if al-hal is this dynamic upward spiral of displacement, it becomes the underlying structural motor for everything.
It's basically the physics of existence.
Yes. It governs how a soul develops, how a human psyche matures, how a biological body literally grows cells to take up more space, and eventually how the cosmos itself expands. It is the engine of reality.
That makes so much more sense when you think about biology.
Right.
Because a fetus isn't just sitting in the womb waiting for a 9-month timer to go off.
Right.
It is actively going through cyclical rotations of cellular division, getting larger, displacing the amniotic fluid, It's working.
Exactly. And the Earth isn't just floating in space ticking off birthdays either. It is rotating around the sun while undergoing massive internal geothermal churn, displacing rock, venting gases, building an atmosphere.
Both the planet and the person are driven by this continuous spiral of structural growth.
Yeah, they're both using that exact same engine.
But hold on a second. If the foundational rule of the universe is continuous, spiraling expansion, uncontrolled spiral is just an explosion, right?
Mm-hmm.
If there's an engine constantly pushing things outward, displacing space, you need guardrails. Otherwise, the baby just keeps growing until it destroys the mother, or the planet just keeps expanding until it tears itself apart. So where does this growth actually stop?
And that leads us directly to the second part of Dr. Waleed's foundation. He calls it the architecture of limits.
Okay.
He argues that the engine of El-Hal is strictly contained by dual boundaries, which he extracts from two very specific words in the text, kamal and tamam.
Now, I know in everyday conversational Arabic, or even in traditional readings, people treat these two words as synonyms. Like they both just kind of mean perfection or completion.
They do, yeah, which Dr. Waleed points out is a massive linguistic error if you are dealing with an exact equation.
Because equations don't have synonyms.
Exactly. In an algebraic formula, you don't have two different variables that mean the exact same thing. It's redundant, so he separates them mathematically. Kamal, he argues, represents the absolute minimum limit.
The minimum, wait, not the ultimate perfection, but the baseline.
Yes, the baseline perfection required for something to functionally exist. It is the foundation, the absolute non-negotiable floor of reality.
Okay, I'm tracking.
If you don't hit the Kamal, the structure either collapses or just fails to manifest entirely.
Okay, so Kamal is the floor. What is Tamam?
Tamam is the maximum limit. It is the ultimate completion, like the absolute ceiling of that specific developmental phase.
The ceiling.
Yeah. It is the point where adding anything more, any more time, any more material becomes redundant, unnecessary, or even harmful.
So we have a structural floor, the minimum baseline, and a structural ceiling, the absolute maximum. But how does he apply this? Because right now, it's a very neat philosophical concept, but I need to see it working in reality.
He applies it across multiple domains. Let's start with the abstract stuff first, the spiritual realm. He connects the floor to the concept of religion and the ceiling to the concept of grace.
Oh, interesting. Walk me through that.
So religion, or the baseline divine law, is the minimum structural requirement for a functioning connection to the divine. It's the rule book. It is the Kamal.
It establishes the foundational boundaries of behavior so society doesn't just, collapse.
Right. But grace, the psychological piece, the existential fulfillment, the emotional reward of that connection, that is the tamam. It is the maximum completion.
Okay.
He points to specific phrasing in the texts where the religion is described as completed, like hitting the baseline floor, while the grace is described as perfected or fulfilled, which is hitting the ultimate ceiling.
He's saying the grammar itself separates the strict structural baseline of the law from the expansive psychological fulfillment of grace. That's really elegant.
It is.
But let's bring it down to earth, literally. How does this floor and ceiling math work in human biology?
This is where his textual extraction gets incredibly specific. Dr. Waleed looks at the phase of human nursing, the external building of a child after birth.
Right.
According to his reading of the numbers provided in the text, the minimum limit, the biological floor, or kamal of nursing a child is exactly 9 months post-birth.
Meaning, if you stop before 9 months, you haven't hit the minimum structural requirement for the child's optimal biological foundation.
Correct. That is the baseline for immune and neurological development outside the womb. But the maximum limit, the tamam, the absolute ceiling where the structural necessity of nursing definitively ends, is 24 months.
2 years.
Exactly. 2 full hauls,
Yep.
2 full spiral rotations of growth.
Now wait, I have to stop you here because this is where I get tripped up. If we are talking about a perfect divine mathematical blueprint, governing reality math doesn't usually like loose variables.
Sure.
Why is there a 15-month swinging space between the minimum floor of 9 months and the maximum ceiling of 24 months? Like, why wouldn't a perfect equation just say every human must nurse for exactly 18 months, period?
It is a brilliant question, and Dr. Waleed's answer reveals a lot about how he views the architecture of the universe. He says this 15-month gap isn't a flaw in the math at all. It is the mathematical calculation of human agency.
It calculates for free will.
Yes. It acknowledges that the physical world is full of natural variation. Mothers have different physical capacities. Children have different nutritional needs. Environments vary.
That makes a lot of sense.
The architecture of creation isn't this suffocating, rigid cage. It has built-in tolerances. The minimum floor ensures survival. The maximum ceiling ensures the biological process doesn't artificially drag on past its utility. But within that 15-month swinging space, the human gets to choose.
Based on what, though?
Based on mutual consent and consultation, which he points out is explicitly codified in the text regarding weaning.
That is fascinating. So the blueprint defines the boundaries of the playing field. It draws the hard chalk lines, but it leaves the space in the middle completely open for you to play the game however you need to.
Exactly. And keep this concept of the swinging space in mind, because we are going to see this exact same allowance for natural variation when we look at planetary evolution later.
Okay, so we have the tools now. We have the engine of growth, that spiral staircase of continuous displacement, and we have our guardrails, the strict minimum floor and the absolute maximum ceiling. Armed with this geometry, Dr. Waleed takes us directly into the womb. He maps out human creation.
He does, and he breaks it down into meticulously measurable, stage-by-stage phases. Let's walk through his timeline.
All right, stage one, the very beginning. He calls this the clay phase, or the first birth.
Right. This is the pre-soul phase. It is purely material, purely biological. It is the initial fusion of the male water and the female eggs. Now, how does Dr. Waleed measure the readiness for this phase? Because you can't build a structure if the site isn't prepped. He points to a very specific metric in the text, 3 Qoru.
Let's translate that for the listener.
Yeah.
He defines Qoru as biological menstrual cycles.
Yes. He argues this is a precise biological clock used to establish the material baseline. It takes 3 complete cycles to guarantee that the uterine environment is fully cleared of any previous biological material, structurally prepared, and hormonally ready for a new blueprint to be drafted.
So it's not just about waiting around. It's an active, required physical preparation of the environment. You are preparing the clay before you start sculpting the human.
Exactly. Only after that baseline is established do we move to stage 2, which is pregnancy. And this is where Dr. Waleed's math gets extremely rigid, and honestly where it heavily conflicts with conventional, casual assumptions.
Right, because if you ask anyone on the street how long human gestation is, they will tell you 9 months, 40 weeks. I mean, it's pretty well established. But that is not what Dr. Waleed's equation says.
No, it's not. Dr. Waleed calculates actual structural internal pregnancy as exactly 6 months.
And I really struggled with this part of the text. You can't just change biological facts to fit a theory. We know babies take 9 months. Why does he insist on 6?
Because he is making a vital distinction between primary structural building and secondary settling.
Okay, what does that mean?
He mathematically isolates the core phase, where the complex foundational architecture of the fetus is actively being constructed, the organs, the skeleton, the primary neural pathways. According to his extraction from the text, this hard structural building phase is exactly 6 months.
So what are the last 3 months then? Just hanging out?
Well, in a structural engineering sense, yes. The final trimester is primarily about weight gain, fat accumulation, and lung maturation.
Right, the baby just gets bigger.
Exactly. The house is already built. The last few months are just turning on the HVAC system and moving the furniture in. But the foundation and the wall, the core structural gestation, is a hard 6 months.
Okay, I see the distinction he's making. And we need to put a massive pin in that number 6, because that is going to be the linchpin for his entire planetary theory later on.
Oh, absolutely.
But let's finish the human biological timeline first.
Yeah.
After the 6 months of structural building, we hit stage 3, which is delivery. And he defines this using a specific term.
Yeah, Al-Wad.
Okay.
And Dr. Waleed emphasizes that delivery is not just a medical milestone. Structurally, it is a massive, violent shock to the system. He links it to the textual concept of wan, which translates to profound weakness or severe shock.
But he calls delivery the second shock. What was the first?
The first wan, the first profound shock to the system, is the internal state of pregnancy itself.
Oh, right.
It is the massive biological and energetic toll it takes on the mother's body to literally manufacture a new human being from scratch. I mean, it drains her calcium, alters her immune system, literally shifts her internal organs around. That is the first shock.
And the second shock?
The second one is the delivery. It is the severe, abrupt neurological and physical trauma of the baby being violently expelled child from the perfectly controlled, temperature-regulated internal environment into the chaotic external world. It is the violent transition from internal building to external reality.
Which brings us back to the math of weaning. The child is out in the world and now needs external building. We established earlier that the ceiling, the maximum limit of nursing, is 24 months. How does he prove that using the numbers in the text? Because he doesn't just guess, right? He actually shows his algebraic work.
He does. He points out that the text provides a total prescribed combined time for both carrying the pregnancy and weaning. That total singular number given is 30 months.
Okay, so the total time equals 30 months.
Now, bring back the variable from stage 2. What was the exact time for the core structural internal pregnancy?
6 months.
Right. So you do the algebra, you take the total combined time of 30 months, you subtract the 6 months of internal structural pregnancy, what are you left with?
Exactly 24 months.
Which is 2 years.
Which is exactly 2 full hauls, the maximum limit, the tamam, of nursing that we established when we were talking about the floor and the ceiling.
Yes.
I mean, you have to admit, the internal logic is flawless. He's not just interpreting metaphors here, he's balancing an equation. 30 minus 6 equals 24. The variables interlock perfectly. The textual math checks out.
Yeah, from a purely structural standpoint, his textual extraction is completely hermetic. There is no wasted space in his equation.
Now, if we pause the deep dive right here, if this was the final page of Dr. Waleed's manuscript, it would still be a deeply fascinating, highly unorthodox medical and linguistic analysis, you know.
For sure. It would be a great debate for linguists and biologists.
But here is the massive pivot. Here is where the text goes from a medical curiosity to a unified theory of reality. He takes this exact mathematical blueprint, the 6 months of internal building, the shock of delivery, the 24 months of external weaning, and he overlays it perfectly onto astrophysics.
This is the exact moment his microscope turns into a telescope.
He is literally arguing that the math that builds a human baby is the exact same math that builds a planet.
Yes, and it hinges entirely on that number 6. Dr. Waleed proposes a profound geometric correspondence. He does the 6 months of human internal biological building perfectly, mathematically mirror the 6 days of cosmic creation for the heavens and the earth mentioned in the ancient texts.
And we need to pause and be incredibly clear about his tone here. Because he is not saying this is a nice metaphor. He's not saying the ancients used poetic symmetry to make a story sound nice.
Not at all. He is arguing for a literal structural equation. Now, obviously, he is not saying the universe was created in 6 24-hour days.
Right.
He identifies those days as 6 distinct cosmic stages or massive geological eras, and his core assertion is that these 6 geological stages directly, structurally, one-to-one, equal the 6 months of fetal development.
So a month of cellular division in the womb structurally equals an eon of planetary formation in the cosmos.
Exactly. He points to the textual phrase of God leveling upon the throne after the 6 days of creation. Now, traditional scholars often struggle with this phrase. They tie themselves in knots to avoid anthropomorphizing the divine. But Dr. Waleed reads it purely as structural engineering.
Okay, but how does a throne fit into structural engineering?
He argues that the human leveling, the moment of completion at birth, when the 6 months of internal building are finished, the architecture is locked in, and the fetus is fully formed and ready to exit, identically matches the cosmic leveling.
So it's the universe finishing its internal gestation of the planet. The blueprint is fully executed.
Yes. It is the definitive moment of structural completion before external manifestation. If you really sit with the philosophical weight of this, it is staggering.
Yeah, it really is.
Dr. Waleed is arguing that the universe doesn't have different sets of rules. It uses one single, elegant mathematical equation for absolutely everything. The womb is just a miniature universe. The universe is just a giant womb. They both require exactly 6 stages of internal closed system building before they can be born into their external interactive phase.
It's the ultimate unifying theory of the macro and the micro. A truly holographic universe where every tiny piece contains the exact blueprint of the whole. And to prove this, he doesn't just wave his hands and say 6 equals 6. He actually charts the specific developmental milestones side by side.
He builds a comparative timeline that maps a human fetus directly against the planet Earth. And walking through this comparative chart is where the theory becomes intensely visual and honestly really hard to ignore.
Let's walk through it, because when I read this section, my jaw was on the floor. Let's start at the very beginning of the timeline, the water phase.
Okay, so we know how humans start. The fetus begins its existence entirely submerged in amniotic fluid. It is a closed, perfectly protected, liquid world. Water is the medium of its initial creation.
Right. And what about the Earth?
Well, geologists and astrophysicists tell us that in its earliest recognizable, somewhat stable form, during what we call the Hadean and early Archean eons, the Earth was essentially a massive, globally submerged water world.
Wow.
Before the massive continental landmasses stabilized and rose, the planet was a volatile sphere dominated entirely by liquid oceans. The starting environmental conditions are structurally identical.
Okay, that's one. The initial water phase matches perfectly. What happens next in the biology?
The clay phase. For the human, Dr. Waleed points out the recurring textual assertion that humans are formed from clay or mud. This specific sticky mixture of water and earth represents the primal biological material. It's the cellular mud that begins to clump together to form tissue.
And how does a planet make clay?
By cooling its magma. The Earth formed its structural foundation by spreading its own primal mud, the cooling, solidifying crust spreading across the surface beneath those global oceans. The early basalts and granites churning and solidifying were the planetary equivalent of cellular tissue forming in the amniotic fluid.
Okay, so the water matches, the clay matches. But rocks and water don't make a living planet, just like cells in a petri dish don't make a person. At what point does the biology actually turn on in this model?
That brings us to the third massive parallel, which he calls the soul, or the settling phase. In human development, this is the profound point where, according to the text, the soul is breathed into the biological vessel. It is the precise moment the fetus transitions from being just growing organic matter to being a living, actualized individual entity. The lights turn on.
And how does Dr. Waleed map a human soul onto a rock floating in space?
He maps it directly to the cosmic command settling over the Earth. This is the transition point where the Earth shifts from being just dead, cooling rock and sterile water into a dynamic, living, self-regulating system.
Oh, I see.
It is the birth of the primordial biosphere, the exact moment the chemical soup sparked into single-celled life. The planet receives its soul, its living biological mandate.
Wow. So now both the baby and the planet are alive. They have finished their internal six-stage gestation. Now comes the birth, the violent shock of transitioning to the outside, and what happens immediately after birth?
External building. For the human, as we discussed with the math of Tamam, this is the period of nursing. It is the absolutely crucial phase of building external strength, bone density, and an adaptive immune system outside the protection of the mother's womb. It is rapid, aggressive growth fueled by absorbing material from the outside environment.
And here's where I really had to stretch my brain. How does a planet nurse? What does the external building phase of Earth look like?
The Earth's external building phase is the massive, violent geological upheaval that built the continents, pushed up the mountain ranges, and developed the complex atmosphere.
Oh, right.
Just as a baby is building its bones and immune system, the Earth was building its bone, the tectonic plates and its immune system, the ozone layer and magnetic field that protect the planet's surface from the deadly radiation of space.
That is an incredible parallel. The magnetic field is literally the planet's immune system against solar wind.
Exactly. And this leads to the ultimate act of separation, the faisal.
Weaning. Think about weaning a child. It is the moment of true independence. It is the moment they are finally physically separated from their dependency on the mother's liquid milk, and they have to start sustaining themselves on solid ground, eating solid food.
Yeah.
Dr. Waleed looks at the geological history of the Earth and says, when the vast monolithic continents finally broke through the surface of those primal oceans, when the solid land physically separated from the liquid water, that was the planet being weaned.
That is exactly his argument. He perfectly links the human faisal, the biological weaning from liquid, to the Earth's geological separation of land and sea. The emergence of dry continents, the rise of land masses above the waves, is the Earth graduating from its initial liquid dependency into a mature, solid-state environment.
The symmetries are almost eerie when you lay them out side by side like that, with no breaks in the logic. From the amniotic fluid to the Hadean oceans, from the breathing of a soul to the spark of a biosphere, from the immune system of a toddler to the magnetic field of a planet, from a baby coming off milk to the tectonic rise of the continents.
It is a flawless structural mirror, but there is a massive missing piece to this puzzle.
Right, because if humans and planets are truly on the exact same developmental track, governed by the exact same geometric equation, how do their timelines possibly sync up for their final stage of maturity?
Yeah, the time difference is huge.
A human reaches structural adulthood in a couple of decades. The Earth takes billions of years to cool down and mature. How does his math reconcile that massive disparity in time?
To solve this, Dr. Waleed introduces a radical mathematical conversion of time. He realizes that you can't just use standard human years to measure planetary eons. You have to understand how the texts actually define the units of time regarding maturity. He focuses on a concept called al-ashud.
Al-ashud. Let's define that working term for everyone.
Al-ashud means reaching full strength or absolute structural stability. It is the point where the entity is finally permanently set.
Okay, prepare yourselves for some more textual algebra. How does he calculate the exact age of al-ashud?
Dr. Waleed notes that the text speaks of a person reaching maturity at 40 sana. Now, conventionally, historically, people just translate the word sana broadly as years, so they naturally assume this means a person reaches full maturity at 40 years old.
Right, the classic life begins at 40. You finally have your life together, you're mature. That's the traditional assumption.
But Dr. Waleed says no, that is a careless reading of the geometry. We're using the wrong unit of measurement entirely. He points to another strict textual distinction between two words for time, a sana and an am.
Okay.
Through a very complex linguistic and mathematical analysis of how these words are used across different texts, he deduces a specific hard conversion rate.
Give me the conversion rate.
1 am is equal to exactly 10 sana.
Okay, 1 a.m. equals 10 sana. I'm following the math.
Therefore, when the text says a human reaches structural maturity at 40 sana, you divide that by 10, it actually translates to 4 am, 4 mathematical years.
But hold on, if we are mapping this to human biology, 4 years old isn't mature. A 4-year-old is a toddler. They can barely tie their shoes. How is that the ultimate point of structural stability?
But you have to remember the continuous timeline we just built. This is 4 years added to the end of the previous developmental phase. What was the absolute maximum ceiling of the previous phase?
The weaning phase. The tamam of nursing, which we calculated was exactly 24 months or 2 years.
Exactly. So you take the 2 years of the weaning phase and you add the 4 am of reaching strength. 2 plus 4 equals 6.
6 years old.
Yes. Dr. Waleed posits that 6 years of age is the exact mathematical point of neuropsychological and core structural completion for a human being. It is the moment the biological and psychological foundation is fully, irrevocably poured and set.
And you know what's crazy about that? If you talk to any modern developmental psychologist or any neuroscientist studying childhood brain development, they will tell you that the first 6 years of life are the most critical, highly plastic window for brain development in a human's entire existence.
Exactly.
By age 6, a child's core attachment styles, their fundamental neurology, their basic personality structure, and their baseline understanding of the world are basically locked in. The concrete has dried.
It is the human ashud. The foundation is set. They will continue to grow and learn, yes, but they will be building on the structure that was finalized at exactly age 6. And this precise mathematical point of maturity beautifully geometrically mirrors the Earth reaching its own ashud.
How does the Earth reach ashud? We know a 6-year-old's brain locks in. What does a mature planet locking in look like?
The Earth's ashud is the final, deep geological stabilization of its crust and the anchoring of its continental mountains. It is the geological point where the violent, chaotic, heavily volcanic, tectonic childhood of the planet finally settles into a stable, mature, predictable rhythm.
The concrete of the planet's crust finally dries.
Exactly. The structural foundation is finally anchored, which allows for highly complex, fragile life to thrive on the surface without being completely wiped out by constant planetary scale reshaping.
Okay, so we've mapped the growth, the birth, the weaning, and the ultimate maturity. But earlier we talked about the architecture of limits, the kamal, the floor, and the tamam, the ceiling. Does Dr. Waleed apply those boundaries to the mature Earth as well, or just to human nursing?
He absolutely applies them to the Earth, and this is where the entire theory ties together in a perfect bow. He asks, what is the baseline perfection, the kamal, of a mature planet? What is the minimum floor required for it to be a living world?
And what's the math on that?
He calculates it as the strict geographic balance of exactly 75% water and 25% land. That is the minimum required ratio of oceans to continents to sustain a global, interconnected web of life.
The planetary floor. If you have too much land, it's a desert world. Too much water, you don't get advanced terrestrial life. 75-25 is the exact sweet spot.
Yes, that is the kamal. But what is the Earth's tamam? Its ultimate completion, its grace, its absolute maximum potential. It is not just the static ratio of oceans to dirt. The tamam is the dynamic addition of extra water continuously circulating through the biosphere.
The water cycle.
Yes, the rain, the rivers, the evaporation, the water vapor traveling through the atmosphere to water the deep inland areas. The kamal is the static geographic ratio, but the tamam is the dynamic, life-giving atmospheric water cycle operating above and through it all.
It's exactly like the human nursing model. The 9 months is the baseline survival floor, but the extra swinging space up to 24 months is the grace, the completion, the added resilience that allows the child to truly thrive.
Right.
The logic holds at every single level of magnitude, from a drop of breast milk to a global hurricane.
Precisely. It is a unified theory of biological and planetary physics.
So we have built this massive interconnected architecture. We have spirals of continuous growth, equations of gestation, planets acting like babies and babies growing like planets. All the math checks out, all the physics align. We have to step back and ask the biggest question of all: why?
Right.
What is Dr. Waleed's ultimate point in doing all this intense textual math? What does this change?
It builds to redefining a single central concept of human existence. It redefines the true meaning of stewardship. In the text, the human being is repeatedly called the Khalifa of the earth, the steward, the successor, the vicegerent.
Right. And historically, culturally, people interpret that title as humans being the bosses of the planet.
Yeah.
We are the kings of the castle. We have top-down dominion over the animals, the forests, and the resources to use however we see fit. It's a hierarchy, with us at the top and the dirt at the bottom.
That is the traditional authority-based heritage reading. But Dr. Waleed's geometric framework completely, fundamentally shatters that hierarchy. He argues that we are not the Khalifa because we have authority or dominance or intellectual superiority over the earth.
Then why are we the stewards?
We are the stewards of the earth because of structural identity. We are the Khalifa because we are exact, walking, breathing fractals of the planet itself. We are made of its exact mathematical logic.
That is a massive paradigm shift.
Think about everything we just covered. Our 6 months of core gestation perfectly mirror its 6 eons of cosmic creation. Our biological weaning mirrors its continents rising from the oceans. Our neuropsychological maturity at age 6 perfectly mirrors its tectonic stabilization.
We aren't outside managers brought in by a CEO to run the planetary factory. We are the ultimate refined product of the factory, carrying the exact architectural blueprint of the entire building in our own cellular DNA.
Exactly. We are bonded to the earth not by a divine decree of arbitrary power, but by the immutable physical laws of geometric and biological creation. We are the earth walking around on the earth. Therefore, to pollute the earth, to strip mine it, to harm it is not just a moral failing. Mathematically and structurally, it is an act of self-harm. You are damaging your own macro body. That is the true meaning of stewardship in Dr. Waleed's framework.
That is, wow. That is a lot to take in. It fundamentally rewires how you look at yourself in the mirror in the morning and how you look at the ground under your feet when you walk outside. You aren't just walking on dirt, you're walking on your own biological history.
It shifts the entire human narrative. It moves us away from a story of alienation where we are just lonely, disconnected, strangers or conquerors placed on a random rock floating in a cold void, to a story of profound, structural, mathematical integration. We belong here because we are here.
Let's try to pull all these threads together, because the journey we've taken through Dr. Khaled Waleed's theories today has been immense. We started by throwing out the standard clock. We redefined the engine of creation, Al-Hal, not as a flat circle of time passing, but as a dynamic upward spiral of continuous physical displacement.
We established the strict boundaries of that growth, the structural floor of Kamal and the ultimate ceiling of Tamam, proving that divine math includes a swinging space for natural variation and free choice.
Then we took that mathematical toolset directly into the womb. We solved the algebraic equation of human gestation, proving how the 30 months of combined carrying and weaning, minus the 6 hard months of internal structural building, perfectly equals the 24 months of the nursing ceiling.
And then we took the most profound leap of all. We overlaid that exact biological math seamlessly onto the geological birth of the planet. We matched the amniotic fluid to the early global oceans, the breathing of the soul to the spark of the biosphere, and the weaning of a toddler to the tectonic rise of the continents.
We calculated the age of maturity, the Ashud, proving that a human's psychological foundation setting at age 6 is the exact geometric equivalent of the Earth's crust finally locking into place. We realized that our stewardship of this planet isn't about dominance. It is based on the undeniable fact that we are its exact mathematical mirror.
And this is what I want to leave you, the listener, with today. As you go about your week after listening to this deep dive, consider how Dr. Waleed's framework changes your daily perspective. You are not an accident. You are not a disconnected entity wandering a random sphere.
Right.
According to this geometry, your very biology is a history book. Every single stage of your physical development from the womb to childhood is a perfect, living reflection of the deep time and the deep history of the planet you call home. You carry the cosmos in your cells.
It is incredibly beautiful. But, looking at all this incredible flawless symmetry, it leaves me with one final unaddressed question that I haven't been able to shake since we started prepping for this.
What's that?
If Dr. Waleed's framework is correct, and human development is a perfect mathematical mirror of planetary evolution from the very moment of conception, what happens when we look at the end of a human life?
I see where you're going with this.
If the beginning perfectly mirrors the beginning, does the natural aging process, the graying of the hair, the physical slowing down, the bones becoming brittle, and the eventual inevitable return to the soil, does the end of a single human life give us an exact, mathematical, terrifyingly precise preview of the geological future and the ultimate death of our planet?
That is a profound and honestly haunting question. If the geometry holds and the beginning perfectly mirrors the beginning, the end must surely mirror the end.
Something to mull over the next time you look up at the stars or down at the wrinkles on your own hands. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.